We people who are darker than blue, don't let us hang around this town and let what others say come true. We're just good for nothing, they all figure. A boy's grown up shiftless jizz. Now we can hardly stand for that, or is that really where it's at? Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Darker Than Blue. It is I, Jackie Lukeman. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad that you are with us today on this Friday the 13th. Wow, I actually didn't realize that today is Friday the 13th. What a shock and a surprise to realize that, yes, today is that special, interesting day. And I mean, the horror movie lore or the folk horror story lore that comes with Friday the 13th. I mean, it ain't got nothing on what we are actually dealing with in this country. And I am going to try to talk about some of that today, but not just me, just because you know how I do. I am used to coming on the show and giving you the information that I have, that I've learned, um and sharing that with you and making those connections. And I love doing that because I get excited when I learn new things, and I don't like to keep it to myself. So I take that excitement and I pour it into a script, an article, a document, a post for, some of the platforms that I'm on. I'll turn it into an article for Black Agenda Report. I'll make a post on my Patreon, patreon.com/Lukeman Nation, LUQMANNATION, if you're interested in following and supporting me on Patreon. I turn it into an article on Substack. Yes, Lukeman Nation has a Substack, substack.com/Lukeman Nation. Or I turn it into some content that I throw up on Black Liberation Media. And of course, I always come here on Friday nights at 5 o'clock and share that information that I learned, that I am so excited about, with you, the listeners and viewers of Darker Than Blue. And I am so glad that today, after I did that for you about this topic of Iran last week, I'm so glad that I don't have to do that today, because today we have a guest. I have a guest who we're going to have this conversation with, so that you realize this is not just stuff that I am making up. This is information that academics, intellectuals, other public figures, serious people, because I know some people are like, oh, that's just Jackie. Okay, fine. It's just Jackie is talking to someone today who is going to bring you information about this Iran conflict, this war on Iran, that I hope contextualizes what is really going on here, as opposed to us continuing to have this weird idea about Iran that is shaped by narratives that don't come from that country or those people. So, without further ado, I am joined today by Nina Farnia. Nina, thank you so much for joining us here on Darker Than Blue. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate the work that you do all the time, but I really appreciate your voice now. I am a huge proponent of letting people tell their own stories. So thank you for being a part of this show and having this conversation with me for us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jackie. It's actually my honor to be here with you and your audience. And I'm a big supporter of you and your work. And you even wrote a blog piece for us, an article for us for the Anti-Imperialist Scholars Collective. So it's truly my honor to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And please introduce people. Tell people who you are in case people don't know who Nina Farnia is, and shame on you if you don't. But tell people who you are.
I'm not a celebrity, and I hope I never will be. But my name is Nina Farnia. I'm a legal historian and a scholar, basically, of modern U.S. imperialism. My scholarly focus is on U.S. imperialism. I'm also a co-founder of the Anti-Imperialist Scholars Collective. I was once president of the San Francisco chapter of the National Lawyers Guild. I come from a community organizing background before going to grad school. And perhaps most importantly, for our purposes, I am Iranian. From Oklahoma, though. I was born and raised in Oklahoma. So.
Look, one of the lines from one of my favorite movies. I've got weird movie taste, but is from one of the sequels, I think, of Pitch Black, and one of the characters says something like, when they're explaining where they come from and how they get to be a part of this huge coalition, one of the characters says, well, we all came from somewhere. So that I think that is definitely true. So let's get into this conversation about Iran and what is really going on. And I kind of want to approach it from a different perspective than maybe a lot of people are thinking, because I don't want to start with a conversation about the culture and women and because that's where everybody wants to start. Mm-hmm. The country is being bombed right now. So I don't want to start the conversation with headdress and that kind of thing. I want to start this conversation, Nina, with the things that we are seeing and hearing in the US about Iran being bombed right now, because there's a lot of talk among politicians in the US about Iran, what it is not, but particularly in the political sense. The conversation among US politicians now is, we need an explanation to Congress for why Iran needs to be attacked. We need congressional approval for this. There needs to be a justification for why this is being done. And I have to say that this is not the first time that this country has dropped bombs on another country without congressional approval. So this is not unusual. But for the sake of answering this question, because now this question is growing outside of the political arena, and people are saying, well, yeah, they didn't make the case for this to Congress. I guess for the sake of answering the question, what did Iran do to the US and Israel to provoke this war? And if they didn't do anything, why are these countries attacking Iran, and what are they trying to accomplish?
Yeah. So I want to actually, if it's okay with you, take your question on from the back end before I answer it, and I'll answer it.
Yeah.
But why are we looking for congressional approval to bomb another country? The crazy thing about this debate is that Iran has never started a war, as far as in its modern history, possibly ever. So why is the US debating about starting yet another war? That's because it's an imperialist power, right? And it wants to regain its control of the planet. So I'll get to your question now. So Iran, if one were to identify the sins of Iran, they would be the Iranian Revolution, and the fact that the Iranian Revolution of 1979 basically, at the people's demands or requests, removed Iran from the American orbit. Iran is now an independent nation that is, in fact, so independent that it is one of the most sanctioned nations in the world. It has effectively been removed from the dominant global market. And it's maintained its independence for nearly half a century now. The other great sin of Iran is that it is a big supporter of the regional resistance and specifically of the Palestinians. As part of the revolutionary process, Iran has in its national constitution a clause that discusses that mandates that the Islamic Republic support all oppressed peoples throughout the world. And in fact, one of the first things that it did when it came into power was stop its basically boycott the South African apartheid regime. Mm-hmm. And I believe Iran was one of the primary providers of oil to the South African apartheid regime at that point. So it was a pretty big move on their part. Its support of the Palestinian resistance is actually in the national budget, the annual national budget. There's a line item in there where for support for the Palestinian resistance, irrespective of faction.
Wow.
Right. And so we have an Islamic Republic that will support the Palestinian left or other Palestinian factions so long as they're truly fighting for Palestinian liberation.
That is written in the Constitution?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's money appropriated for carrying out that, whatever that solidarity action looks like, the commitment is solidified in the Constitution with a corresponding line item in the country's budget.
Yeah. The constitutional clause says oppressed peoples. The budget, so that leaves the room open for other oppressed peoples like those that were subject to the South African apartheid regime. But the budget right now is, they have a line item for Palestine. Yeah.
That is,
and they're the only country in the world that does.
That is, as a member, as a citizen of the global South, which is what we really need to start thinking of ourselves as, folks.
I agree.
As a citizen of the global South, as a member of an oppressed group of people, that, oh my gosh, that is enormous. And over here on YouTube, we've got a comment in the chat where someone reminded me, is it true that Iran was the first country to honor El Haj Malik El-Shabazz, otherwise known as Malcolm X, with a stamp?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is true.
Wow. That is amazing. And that is amazing considering we live in a country in which Baba Jalil Muntaqim just went to offer remarks at a hearing for affordable housing where he lives, and the police walked out on that former political prisoner's comments about affordable housing because they're mad because he was a freedom fighter, and they're still accusing him of shooting police, and you know, which is why he was locked up for as long as he was. And the hatred of Black revolutionaries in this country today is still very evident. So to hear that the government of Iran honored one of our revolutionary heroes with a whole stamp, just and the solidarity with oppressed people is written into the Constitution. I must ask our listeners and our viewers, where here is anyone doing that in regard to us? Just want you to think about that as we're continuing this conversation. Thank you so much, Nina, for that. So now this leads me to kind of look at the way this war is kind of, I don't know if metastasizing is the right word, because now the UK, I mean, now the UK is involved in this thing. I don't know why, but they are. And obviously, U.S. and Israel carried out unprovoked attacks on Iran. UK has now, I guess, in the last day, the United Kingdom has decided that they want to get involved in this, but they seem to be the only U.S.-Israel ally who, or that is joining this. And I'm thinking of George Bush's coalition of the willing right now, and I'm so sorry, but that just popped into my head. But I'm wondering what your thoughts are on now Britain getting involved in this. And do you think Iran's response will differ or change now that the coalition has expanded by one. And what do you think the impact will be for the UK, considering their current political miasma that they have going on?
Well, one thing, one thing that's really interesting about the UK is that when it came to the genocide of the Palestinians, the marches and protests in support of Palestine were massive.
Yes.
Just massive and extraordinary and consistent, right? Very, very consistent. And so the UK population, the population of the United Kingdom, seems not to be very interested in wars in the region, in imperialist wars in the region, whether they're US wars or UK wars or whatever. The US has been trying very hard for the last couple of weeks to get allies to support it in this project, in this imperialist violence. It's tried to push the Gulf states, it's tried to push the European states. The European states, I don't think would have any qualms about doing it, but they are opportunists. And so they see the US flailing and falling, the US imperialism falling, US as a politically flailing both domestically and internationally. They have their own concerns about NATO and the NATO war on Russia in Ukraine, which there is their primary war. And so I think, just to be clear, they are not anti-war, the European states or the NATO states. They are very much pro-war.
Right.
But they have other priorities. They got priorities, right? And Russia is their priority. So now that being said, I have no doubt that there is security cooperation behind the scenes. But we just don't know about. Just like there was security cooperation and intelligence gathering, etc., during the genocide on Palestine.
Right.
So, and there could probably continues to be now. So they are probably participating, but they're doing it in more surreptitious ways so that they can't be held accountable and so that they can reserve their primary, their resources for the NATO war on Russia.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much this is going to change Iranian calculations, because the bottom line is UK is still kind of strong, but not really that strong. And so, and the Iranian position is very clear. The Iranian position is, we want US bases out. We want the United States out of this region. They pose a threat to the region. They've killed millions and millions of people in this region.
Yes.
Through sanctions and through direct warfare and through genocide for decades now. And coming out of this Mossad and CIA-sponsored urban warfare campaign in January, where Iranians were being dismembered in the streets, where their bodies were being set on fire, the Iranian and June's 12-day war, the Iranians have had enough. And so I don't know to what extent their calculations are going to change. They recognize that the primary contradiction in the world is US imperialism, and they're acting on that contradiction.
I'm hoping that with this conversation, people here in the US, particularly on the left, whatever that broad spectrum of not right-wing politics is in the left, I hope this conversation helps bring a level of clarity that's closer to Iran's clarity, because man, we are a mess over here with this topic. And what something you said actually caused me to think of another question, and that is the role of the UN in their I see you rolling your eyes. For those of you who are listening,
I didn't mean to roll my eyes. For the listeners out there, I did not mean to roll my eyes.
That's okay. I roll my eyes. I have been rolling my eyes at the UN for 2.5 years. That's okay. And That's the question.
It just happened like on its own. I don't know.
Yes, I can't control my face when some things are in front of it, and I'm happy to know that neither can you. I feel better about myself. So, what do you have to say about the role of the United Nations in this so-called rules-based order scheme that they are supposed to be the anchor for, the launching pad of? What do we say to a United Nations that's supposed to be upholding a rules-based order when this entity has done nothing to respond to several genocides, decades of what you just said, the U.S. Killing people, millions of people in the Near East, North Africa region, and now doing nothing in response to an unprovoked war on Iran. What should be our assessment and posture toward toward the United Nations now?
Yeah. So I will start by saying one thing, which is that according to the UN Charter, nation states whose sovereignty has been violated have a right to self-defense. Right, and so Iran was bombed, children were killed, schools, little girls were killed on that first day, and it has a right to self-defense in light of that. So just to be clear, and people need to be clear about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about history. So the United Nations was not founded merely to bring peace and justice to the world. And I actually, I'm a historian, and so I went to the FDR archives, which are not far from where I'm based. And there are documents in those archives that talk about the creation, the founding of the United Nations. And part of the project was to use soft power to maintain the dominance of the Euro-American elite. And so soft power obviously is Hollywood. Soft power is aid, foreign aid, USAID, etc. These are all examples of soft power. All this sort of like anti-Soviet movies from the 80s are like peak Hollywood soft power. All the anti-Iraq movies from the 2000s, right, are to justify and convince people that the war on Iraq was a good thing. And so the creation of the United Nations was part of that. And the proof is in the pudding. The Security Council is dominated by European powers. Iran is not on the Security Council. Cuba is not on the Security Council. South Africa is not on the Security Council. Angola is not. DPRK is not. And so they do have rotating positions, but they don't have veto power.
Who has veto power that cannot be overruled?
The United States, France, the United Kingdom, right? Yes.
Yep.
Russia and China. And so Russia and China, they're two votes. To the extent that they would use their veto power, they will be over. The other three are always going to make sure to maneuver around them. So the United Nations maintains the function of international law, and international institutions are to maintain sort of a Euro-American imperialist equilibrium in the post-war era, right? Post-World War era, after World War II. Now, does that mean that like global South states don't use the United Nations at all? No, they use the United Nations to advance their interests. I think Hugo Chavez, I'm not sure if it was Hugo Chavez, but Venezuela, for example, created a Friends of the UN. And these are sort of anti-imperialist or anti-imperialist adjacent friends as states, members of the UN, that Iran is a member of, Cuba is a member of, etc. So they use the international mechanisms because those are the mechanisms that exist. But those mechanisms are never going to save the global South from U.S. imperialism or European imperialism. And the Security Council just voted on a resolution against Iran. They didn't vote on a resolution against the United States
Right.
invasion of Iran.
Mm-hmm.
And Russia and China abstained. And then a lot of people on social media complained and were like, what kind of allies are these? I understand the position, right? But the fact of the matter is that Russia and China are actually Iran's greatest allies right now in this war. They're providing all kinds of support to Iran that is sort of publicly available. You can find it in the media. So the United Nations, because it's so ineffectual, especially for the global South nations or the anti-imperialist nations, is not really a reflection of alliances or strategies or goals for those nations, right? So I understand the criticism, and I don't, it's fine, but we got to think about these issues historically and politically and diplomatically as well.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you explaining the reality of how the Security Council vote is distributed, who's on it, and how that vote works. Right. So even when, and we have talked about this, we meaning members of the Black Alliance for Peace have certainly talked about this in different contexts where we have said, okay, we don't like that China keeps, abstaining from a vote, but they will abstain from a vote, and Russia does the same thing. They will abstain from a vote knowing the distribution of the vote, and even if they vote no, it will be overturned by the other votes. But what they will do, and I cannot tell you why they don't just vote no instead of abstaining and doing this whole thing. There are political and strategic reasons why they do that. However, what we don't see is that whenever there is a vote, both China and Russia issue very comprehensive, very clear, very detailed reasons, justifications, and explanations for their position, how they see the situation, and why they are opposing the action, even as they abstain from a vote. So I appreciate you explaining that this thing that they do at the UN is such a small part of a larger uh, um, reality that we don't see on the back end because we just are not in the middle of those relations. But again, social media being what it is, the internet being what it is, you can go to the United Nations website and read these documents. Every time there is a Security Council vote and China and Russia vote however they do, please just go to the United Nations website and read all of the documentation on that particular vote, because I guarantee you China and Russia have submitted documentation that explains how they see the situation. So I really appreciate you explaining that. And I want to ask you a little bit more, because this whole thing about soft power really does, I think it is, now that I'm looking back on decades of popular media that I consumed, that millions of people consumed, and I knew what I was watching, but I'm thinking about all of the millions of people in this country who did not realize that when they were watching, like Sally Field's 19, when
Oh
did that
yeah, yeah.
movie come
I
out?
always like forget about that movie because I blocked it out.
Yeah, I did. I
Not
can't.
without my daughter. Not without
Yes,
my
I
daughter.
think that came out in the 90s or something or other like that. Then there was the television show 24, which was a
I also
huge hit.
I actually never watched it because I knew it was so anti-Iranian.
Yeah.
But I heard it was very entertaining. I don't.
I think I watched probably the first 2 or 3 seasons of it because before I just finally got bored and like, okay, can we stop with the terrorist trope? Good grief. There's not there are serious threats in this world, and that's just, but there was that show, but then there was also the movie 300,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
it's an
Also
incredible
another one that
movie,
I avoided because I
incredibly
knew it was going to be
popular.
racist. Yeah.
And people don't and I didn't realize at first how incredibly racist it is to Persian
Yeah.
people, but I think I didn't
Did you see
realize.
The Hunt for Red October?
I watched it the first time And I thought, oh, good. But, you get a little older, you go back and you watch it again, and you're like, what in the
What? Yeah,
world?
yeah.
What? Why was I cheer? So some of this stuff is has been around for so long that many of us watch these movies and television shows so many years ago when we weren't as politically aware as we are now. So now, I'm kind of going back and going, "Oh my God." But I think what I'm thinking of is the idea of soft power here, Nina, because we anti-imperialists, and I admit I am guilty of this. When I explain soft power, it's always about the ways the US government and other imperialist states use its own institutions and agencies to carry out the diplomatic policies, the negotiations and the deals and that kind of thing. That is the polite face of, if you don't do this, then what's coming next are the guns, right? That's the way I think I kind of think about soft power in regard to imperialism. I have not been great at connecting the entertainment industry with soft power.
Yeah.
So when I'm thinking now about reality television shows like The Shahs of Sunset,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm thinking about them in the context of these videos of the diasporic Iranian women,
Mhm.
and men, but it's mostly women dancing and saying, yes, please bomb our country, free Iran.
Scantily clad, right? Because
Yes,
we want
yes.
our Iranian women to be not naked, but just barely clothed.
Yes. So I think I appreciate that for me, you have expanded soft power to include the conversation of not just media as in the news, which is what we're thinking of. And this is something, this part of this discussion on soft power is something that me and Erica Keynes and a couple of other people in BAP we're always talking about, because we watch a lot of television and we are politically aware, and we see these
Yeah.
connections. So when we're talking about connecting imperialism, this war right now, the genocide in Gaza, the war in Sudan and Congo, and how do we what would be your view on how to tell people, okay, entertainment is nice, movies are great, but all of this is propaganda, and it's
Yeah.
not innocent, it's not innocuous, and it almost seems overwhelming. So how would you have the conversation with people in trying to get what looks to me like a population of people who don't really care what's happening to Iran because it's not happening to them, but also don't realize that the propaganda about Iran to get them to not care about Iran has been in their house for 40 years?
Yeah. Um, so I'll say this in terms of the function of soft power, and then I want to give a really interesting contemporary example that actually doesn't directly have anything to do with Iran. Because I too watch a lot of, I like watching shows.
Hmm.
Um, so the function of these movies is to gain consent from the public, right?
Hmm.
So to get the people to believe that even with maybe all the problems that come with political trends or U.S. positions, etc., or policies, that this is ultimately the best or right decision.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and if you gain the consent of the people, right, like that Iran is a vile country that oppresses women, and so maybe a war against Iran is not great, but also the Islamic Republic sucks. So maybe we'll just like sort of sit back and hope the war ends.
Mm.
That's sort of the function of the anti-Iranian propaganda from Hollywood, and everywhere else, and academia, etc. Um, One thing that's super interesting for those that like have Netflix is that on Netflix there are a ton of shows right now and have been for maybe 10 years. And even on like on the Food Network, of like people living in the country, with the horses and
yeah.
all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're a like an unassuming viewer, you would think, oh, well, this is all about the troubles of city life, etc., etc., and going back to our roots. Well, what are the roots, right? The roots are settler colonialism and slavery. So
right.
so when you see like a nice show where like people live in the like Yellowstone, so
Oh yes,
quality show, no question, right? Like it's a Kevin Costner, great acting, good show. Is it benign?
Mm.
No,
Mm.
it's not benign.
Mm-hmm.
That show is about settler colonialism today.
Right.
It's about people owning, I don't even remember how many hundred, I think it was like 100,000 acres.
Mm-hmm. What are you going to do with it? What is a person or a family going to do with 100,000 acres? You don't have that many horses. You don't.
No. And why does anybody need that much land? So and then the show, and this show starts with this fight with the indigenous nation that they border. And they have a good relationship with the nation, and then it ends with that as well. And so the idea here is, okay, well, we took their land, but now look at us.
Right.
We're coexisting.
We're getting along.
Yeah, not the 2-state solution that people want in Palestine. The 35-state solution where the United States dominates and Canada dominate North America, and then you have all these tiny little reservations that are dependent.
Right. Right. That is so important to point out. And I'm so glad you brought up Yellowstone, because I think I started watching and I started really enjoying it. And then I felt bad because I'm like, you know what? You know this is garbage. What are you enjoying this for? You turn this off.
It's complete garbage. But Kevin Costner, I
mean that's how they
but
get
then
us.
There was that movie. What was that movie that he played in? Dancing with Wolves, right?
Another one of those movies that you see and you think, oh, this is great. But then when you get a little older and you think about it, it's like, wait a minute now. That was a big old psyop. That's ridiculous. Well, hey, folks, it is a little past 30 minutes past the hour. So you know what that means. It is time for a WPFW station break. And you absolutely want to find out what this station has for the community this week. So, engineer extraordinaire, what do we have on tap for the people today?
Percussionist, hip hop artist, and actor from DC, Jabari Exxon, who worked on the film Black Panther as a movement coach and lead djembe player, will bring his percussion theater concept, interweaving music, theater, storytelling, to the Gateway Arts Center listening room stage at 3901 Rhode Island Avenue, Brentwood, Maryland, on Friday, March 13th at 8 p.m. Details are on the events at pgparks.com.
Don't shoot first and keep digging for change like a new bird. You gotta learn it. Thank you so much. That was the most serious, fun advertisement I think I've ever heard. He's like, listen, you're going to come out and have a good time, but this is going to be a serious good time. So, that's really fantastic. Thank you so much. And I just want to very quickly remind people and tell people who do not know that Friday, March 13th is Al-Quds Day. It is an international day of solidarity with the Palestinian people and the Palestinian liberation struggle. Please go to blackalliance4peace.com/events/al dash Quds QUDS dash day dash 2026 for more information. That's blackalliance4peace.com/events/Al Quds Day 2026. So, Nina, I want to pivot now and talk a little bit more about Iranian society, because all of this, I tried to think about this kind of in a backward sort of way to get from where we are now to eventually get to how we got here. And one of the ways that we just talked about on the other side of the break that we got here is through the indoctrination of not just American people, but people in much of the West about what Iran is as a society, how the people are treated, how the women are treated, the children. It seems like nobody ever cares about how the men in any society, but that's another, that's
Men of color.
that's another, yeah, that's
Black
another
and brown
thing.
men, nobody cares.
Because it's very interesting. In this country, there's a whole lot of focus on how white men are being discriminated against. And I can't ever say that without laughing, because that is the most laughable thing. But that's where we are. But the same people never seem to care about men, little boys, old men, disabled men, in the countries that they're bombing, when they say they are bombing these countries to free the repressed and oppressed women. And the oppression always seems to have to do with what the women are wearing. They are covering themselves up. They're presenting themselves in some kind of traditional dress that is connected to a faith. So let me stop beating around the bush. A lot of this hatred of Iranian society stems from Islamophobia. And that Islamophobia is fueled by largely white Christians in this country, who themselves are what we are calling white Christian nationalists, but I've been calling them Christofascists for a while, because that's what they are. This is not a religious conversation, because I know that this is not a religious issue.
It's all the same God. It's all the same God.
Same God, different names. That's just and different names because different groups of people in different places with different languages talked about the same thing. That's it.
Allah Akbar. God is great.
That's
it. How many churches say God is great on a regular basis?
Every day. I said it this morning like 6 times when I finally was able to when I was finally able to stand up straight after I got out of bed. Because the weather up and down here. So my question is, outside of this religious discussion that I don't want to have, because I know this is not the issue, what do you want people to understand about Iranian society and the people in it, and the way they engage with society and the government? And I know this is a big question, but I'm asking it this way because I don't want any guardrails on what the answers are. How do people in Iran engage with their government? What is life in society like for people who we think of as marginalized? What's Iran like for disabled people? What is it like for women? What is it like for queer people? Because we're hearing a thing about how all of those people are allegedly brutally treated in Iran, but we're also seeing members of those groups of people in the streets defending their country and government right now. So straighten this out for us, please, Nina. What do we not understand, or what are we being lied to about Iranian society?
Yeah. So I'm going to do the reverse this time. I'm going to answer the question and then I'm going to back into it. Iran, before the 1979 revolution, was a deeply, deeply underdeveloped society and country. Something like 35% or less of the population was literate. So what I'm saying, that means that they could not, an overwhelming majority of the population could not read and write.
Less than 35% of the population could read.
Figure.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's around right before the 1979 revolution, so the 1978 or 76 figures. After the revolution, actually similar to the Nicaraguan revolution, right after these two revolutions, those two governments took on major projects to raise the literacy levels of the population. Both countries now have extraordinarily high literacy rates in the 90 percentiles. For women in Iran, it was even lower. So it was like lower than that 35% figure. Imagine that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, women in Iran dominate the university population. 60% of the university population is made up of women. Women are, people estimate between 50 to 70% of the STEM graduates, so science, technology, engineering, math graduates are women. And this is important not merely because in the United States, women are generally kept out of those disciplines,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's important because the reason women are kept out of those disciplines in the United States is because that's where the money is, not because like we're not good at math.
Right.
It's because where the money is and it's where the power is. And so the fact that in Iran, they are funneling women into those disciplines is an indication of the state of women in that country. If you look at the UN Development Index figures for Iran, even though Iran is one of the most sanctioned nations, one of the most besieged nations in the world, that index for Iran is at 0.79, which is comparable to Cuba's, which is 0.8. And this is you can just Google it online.
Mm-hmm.
Iran was heavily reliant on imports for agricultural products before the revolution, even though it's a country that's basically the size of Europe, and has lots of different terrain, et cetera. Now it's almost, again, the figures, I think this is a UN agricultural program or something. Those figures are, in terms of food sovereignty, are extraordinarily high, like something beyond 50%, I think maybe even close to 80%. And Iran is now an exporter of major foodstuffs that people consume on a regular basis. So the Islamic Republic has radically transformed the state of Iranian society since the revolution, and Iran is continuing to develop. It's now become an exporter of household appliances. It has a domestic biotech and pharmaceutical industry. And this is through an initiative called the resistance economy, whereas they were increasingly excluded from the global market, they realized that they're going to have to do everything on their own. And that's precisely what they did. So, and so I want to now explain why this is important. And I tell my students this because, I teach at a law school, and so we think a lot about power and government and, good governance, et cetera. Every single system of government in the world, and it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a democracy, a fake democracy, a true democracy, socialist, communist, Islamic, Christian, whatever, right? Whatever it is going to have aspects of coercion and aspects of consent. Okay. And what I tell my students is, for example, in the United States, in order for me to have a roof over my head and feed my family and have health care, I have to sell my labor. I don't have a choice.
Right.
If I stop selling my labor for any period of time, I lose my health care. I will likely lose my house. And I won't be able to feed my family. I don't consent to that arrangement. I do not. And there are societies in the world where that stuff is provided.
Right.
And so if we're to think about freedom, we have to think about it. Freedom is much more complicated than we think. It's not just about being able to wear whatever you want, and say whatever you want. That you really can't say whatever you want in the United States anyway.
I was about to say.
Yeah. It's much more complicated than that. And I'll end by saying, but if you really care about what women wear and want women to be able to wear whatever they want and want to be able to see naked women and whatever it is, well, in Iran they're no longer enforcing the hijab laws. So
what?
You get to see scantily clad Iranian women too now, if that's your thing.
What? You mean to tell me the government in Iran is really not these violent, evil, psychotic? What did these people call them? Religious fanatic. I mean, come on.
Religious fanatics. Yeah.
And this leads me to, because this isn't even a question. I'm not really asking the question. I'm just making this statement. Whatever people have in regard to how any other government in the world engages with members of their population who are gender nonconforming, who have some type of mental or physical, visible or invisible disability, people who are, the opposite gender, whatever, Black people, because now everybody is apparently anti-Black. Now Iran is anti-Black, Nina, because people saw pictures of Africans in Iran. So they're now that they know that there are Africans in Iran, they're like, well, Iran is anti-Black too. So
are you serious?
I am not kidding. People have seen pictures of Black people in Iran.
There are Black people in Iran.
Yes,
that are like indigenous to Iran.
And people do not know that because we don't read, beloved. We don't read. So yes, people are now finding out that, oh my God, we are in Iran. And now the argument is being made in some circles, well, we have to find out how those people are treated in Iran, because I bet you those Iranians are racist. So I say that, I bring that up to remind people that I don't think there's a government on the planet that is more repressive toward its people than this one. And any former colonial power that is now a neo-colonial imperialist power, and that's the UK. We don't have freedom of speech in this country. We can't protest this government in support of Palestine without being threatened with arrest. Yeah. People have lost their jobs. They've been kicked out of college, high school, suspended from high school. Little children sent home from middle school to their parents because they violated some newly made up rule that you can't say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Yeah. And if we're concerned about another country being quote unquote anti-Black, I really want us to understand that every politician in this country can't stand poor Black people, even Black politicians. So can we not focus on, not to say that there are no contradictions within the Iranian government. Yeah. But as Nina just said, every government has contradicted, every society has contradicted, because people are weird and messy, because we're human beings. That's just how we are. Mm-hmm. But governments, there are countries where the governments make a concerted effort to ensure that every member of its society has their basic human rights met. And then they go beyond that. So while we're obsessing over how Iran and its government engages with its Afro-Indigenous population, how they engage with their queer population. And by the way, trans-affirming care is a thing in Iran that nobody is legislating out of existence. It exists in Iran.
Yeah, trans-affirming care is actually significant in Iran.
Yeah. So while we are obsessing over these things that we struggle with, this government paying absolutely no attention to and actually using now against us legislatively, we're, instead of fighting this government for rights for those groups of people here, we are projecting what we're not getting onto a country that is being bombed by this country that's not serving those groups of people here at all. And please stop, y'all. Please stop.
Can I jump in with that?
Absolutely, please do.
So anti-Blackness as an international phenomenon did not exist until the transatlantic slave trade and chattel slavery. Mm-hmm. Anti-Blackness as a capitalist phenomenon did not exist until then. And so if your primary concern, and anti-Blackness is real and it is global, but if that is your primary issue, you should take it up with the people that created it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take it up with the people that created it, just the structural basis of it, its skeleton is going to just disintegrate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So time is never long enough. This colonial construct of hours and it's never enough. We need to go back to the indigenous way of marking time so we can sit around and talk about our issues and our struggles and connect them and dream of the world that we are going to build on the other side of this, because dear listeners and dear viewers, that's what I'm doing. That's why
Yeah.
I do this.
Yeah.
Yes, I like to give information and I love to share what I learn and all this kind of stuff. And I love to talk because I like to talk. But what I'm also trying to get us to do is to dream of a world that is better than this one. And when I say world, I really do mean country, because a lot of the rest of the world, they're fine. They're fine if we would just deal with this.
Yeah.
So let's do that. Thank you, Nina Farnia, so much for joining me. Will
Thank
you
you,
come
Jackie.
back?
You're one of my favorite. You're like so wonderful.
Oh my
Your
gosh.
questions are so good. You're brilliant. You're funny. It's just like I love being with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, that answers my next question, because it's, will you come back to have another conversation with it?
Back.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I would love that.
And so yeah, definitely for those of you on YouTube and Facebook, stick around for a few minutes. I've got a little bit of wrap up commentary. But you on Darker Than Blue, thank you so much for joining. Talk to you next week. Luta continua, the struggle continues. But if we keep fighting, Victoria Asserta. Peace.
Or is that really where? Thank you. We people.
All right.
Who are
All right, Nina, thank you so much.
You're always so awesome.
I'm
so glad that we've crossed paths.
I know. I was really glad too. I am so glad that you were able to come on and break some of this down. I really am tired of talking about the hijab shit. I really am. I'm sorry. I just like, Jesus Christ, man. Would you leave those women's scarves alone? Leave it alone. And if you have that big of a problem with headdress, please go talk to the Catholics. Go talk to the Catholics. And then while you're at it, if that's a problem, go talk to the Eritreans and see how that works out.
Or the Cowboys.
Oh,
how about the Cowboys?
I just we focus on the weirdest things in this place. It's driving me a little bit nuts, Nina. I'm trying to maintain some type of revolutionary, mature, elder composure, but inside my head, sometimes when I go on social media and I have conversation with people, all I am hearing in my head is, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why? But I can't respond that way because that's not how conversation gets started and is maintained, and that sure isn't how I got into organizing. But unfiltered now, the 2 minutes, what do you have to say to us here? You know, as an Iranian American, as an Iran, I just hate the whole American part of it. Sorry, but
yeah, I know.
What do you? I can I can say things to us about what I think we should do, but I think it's more important coming from you. What do you want to see us do in response to this moment right now?
I mean, obviously, like, get the bases out of the region. Let's liberate Palestine. Let's work with the Palestinians to liberate Palestine. Get the U.S. bases and the foreign bases out of the region. But you know what? Like, I agree with you. If the people in this country deal with this country, right? Like, if the land is returned to the rightful caretakers of this land, and if Black people get what they deserve, which is also land, the world would be a better place, right? And so the North American question, when we say that imperialism is the primary contradiction, the primary problem in the world, that doesn't exclude North America, because this land was created through colonial and imperial processes. Mm-hmm. That includes this land that I'm speaking from. If we can deal with this here, it's, everybody else will be fine, and the people here will be fine too.
Yeah. Where can we find you? Where can we find your work, Nina?
If you Google me, you can go to my work website, and some of my stuff is posted there. I'm going to update it with more recent stuff as well.
Excuse me.
And probably most importantly, if you go to the Anti-Imperialist Scholars Collective website, and we have a blog or magazine called "The Pen Is My Machete," and there's lots of work there. I don't think I have much work there, but there's lots of awesome work there.
Yeah.
And I'm on the editorial board for that.
Yeah, really fantastic stuff on Anti-Imperialist Scholars Collective. I was really honored when I was asked to contribute a piece, and I'm always just like, Sharice, you want me to do what? No, I'm no, I'm not as smart as you. No. So thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And we will be talking to you again soon.
Thank you, Jackie. Take care.
All right, you too. Peace.
Solidarity always.
Always.
Free the land.
Free the land. Peace. All right, let me see if I can. Where's my thingy? I can never find the right buttons. Okay, there we go. All right. What are you doing? Okay, there it is. All right, y'all. So, that's interesting. I don't know what's happening with my thing here. But thanks so much. I'm glad y'all came on. Sorry about the weird graphics. I don't know what's happening. I don't care what's happening right now. It's been a long week. It's been a long day. I hope what Nina shared gives you some insight into some things that you didn't know before. I hope that you are inspired to go read some more, to learn some more, to really question what you are watching when you're watching these television shows and movies where they're talking about any Middle Eastern country, but particularly Iran. Yeah, I really hope that this was helpful for you all. And thank you so much. Thanks for joining. Thanks for your support. Please support Luqman Nation on Patreon, patreon.com/Luqman Nation, LUQMANNATION, or on Substack. Same thing, LUQMANNATION. Also, please support Black Liberation Media, where I am on the Remix Morning Show at least 2 days a week from 8 to 10. And this show airs every Friday from 5 to 6 or 5 to 7, depending on how long I feel like talking. I do have 2 videos that I owe Black Liberation Media for the Patreon. I'm having technical issues with the videos, but I'm going to get them up there soon. And I did a speech, a little message for my Lenten service for my church yesterday, which I thought was really good and really interesting because I talked about why Christians believe the lies they do about the apocalypse, because it's not in the Bible. None of this stuff that Hegseth is and these generals are talking about. Oh, we need to start this war to light the fire of the apocalypse, to compel Jesus to come. But that it's not in the Bible. The rapture is not in the Bible. The pre-tribulation period is not. It's not in there. But a whole bunch of Christians believe it because of the incredible organizing and coordination of right-wing white Christians who didn't like the idea of Jesus being Palestinian and the one who breaks down the dividing wall that empires create between the people they oppress to keep oppressing them. Yes, that is why it's important that Jesus Christ, whether he existed or not, is Palestinian. I'm going to leave you with that. So thanks a lot, y'all. I appreciate you. Have a good weekend. Get involved in an Al-Quds Day action if you can, blackallianceforpeace.com for that information. And I'll see you next time. Peace.